this appears to be the cedar in the 5th photo. All that's left to do is measure it and find out whether this is 26 feet across. And after all these years, we actually found Maywell's mystery tree.
Is it as big as we thought?
15.1. I actually thought it might have been bigger than that.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's great. This is a great tree. Absolutely.
You can hear the exhaustion and a bit of disappointment in Eric's voice as we find out that this isn't Maywell's tree. It is a gorgeous giant cedar though, worth registering, and it may well be in the top 10 or 20 cedars in the world.
High five.
We've got a bet going.
Oh yeah, right.
You got the first one.
After getting the diameter, the next thing is to use this laser to get a height of the tree.
It's a handsome tree.
Oh. Hey, there you go, my second shot. This one's for all the marbles.
The final measurement is a canopy spread. Now we can submit this tree to the Big Tree Registry. The catalog of all the currently measured, record, or astonishingly large trees in the province. The tree can be sized up pretty good from the base. First you're going to wrap a tape around it to get the circumference, then divide by pi to get a diameter. Next you'll have to get a height, which is going to require some trigonometry, measuring the distance from the tree and the angle at which you shoot. You can find out the height. The next thing is a crown spread. Any one of these 3 measurements is enough to register a tree with the Big Tree Registry. But if you really want a ranking, you want all 3. Then you're going to convert them to imperial, return your diameter to circumference, divide your crown spread by 2, keep your circumference in inches, combine them all, that's the score, and it's the 10th largest cedar on the registry right now. As arbitrary as the rank of this individual tree may be, the Big Tree Registry itself is not arbitrary. Over the last 4 decades, it's transformed communities and forests around the province. It's been 30 years since Maywell Wickham measured 2 giant cedar trees. One he registered as the largest tree in Canada and the largest western red cedar in the world. But it was the smaller of the 2. The other he kept a secret, taking its location to his grave. Decades later, the hunt has been sparked again, and a new generation of tree hunters is racing to find Maywell's mysterious giant.
To feel like the biggest tree on Earth outside of California is just waiting for someone to find it is awe-inspiring.
That's record redwood and sequoia size. So if we have something like that here,
Oh wow.
what else is out there?
Some didn't believe that it existed at all.
I think as a myth, it serves the truth, which is what good myths do.
Big trees. It's there.
Randy was our best known early tree hunter. He was a wonderful fellow, magnetic.
"62 feet, 18.6 meters in circumference. A tree like this is probably 15 or 1600 years old, maybe older. It's not surprising these forests have the greatest volume of living matter of any place on the planet.
He established the first BC Big Trees Registry. It was It was a registry that was held by, that was run by Randy. And then he died in a tragic ski mountaineering accident, and it was a huge loss. So there were a number of people who were interested in conservation issues and were friends of Randy that were trying at the time to establish an area of the upper Lillooet River as the Stoltman Wilderness Area. Of course, because it was the Stoltman Wilderness, we measured some big trees there, including 2 of the biggest western white pine in British Columbia. I took the records of the western white pines, Pinus monticola, and I mailed them in to the BC Forestry Association, which at the time was the mailing address for the BC Big Trees Registry. And I got a letter back saying that they'd never heard of a Big Trees Registry. And that's what got me started.
Andy takes up the call to resurrect the Big Tree Registry after Randy's passing. He has a knack for building community, and he'll draw on many people to fill the giant shoes left by Randy Stoltman. Drawing on citizens from across the province to seek out and register their favorite local trees. The integrity of the registry will be maintained by Sally Atkin and her co-worker Christine, who will ensure that every Big Tree submission is verified before it is registered. Add a few more tech wizards and a couple registered foresters, and you have the modern Big Tree Registry, an ever-growing and methodically compiled database of all the largest trees in British Columbia. Recently, an election was called, and a new chair has now taken Andy's place with a strong vision for the future.
Let's say red elderberry. Opposite branching. Acuminate tip at the leaf. Nice serrated edges. Compound leaf. Those will be the little red berries. She's a beaut. Now, like finally we have some legislation that protects these big trees. That regulation was based initially on the Big Tree Registry, and like as a database, the government looked at the BC Big Tree Registry and they started playing around with kind of what constitutes a big tree. How big should a tree be for it to be protected?
This is a summary of that legislation. If you find a tree of this species and size anywhere in the province, it will automatically be protected.
It's really special to nominate a tree from your community. So there's this whole cultural aspect of it. And kind of going back to the beginning, this premise that like, you know, surely we can all agree that we should save the biggest tree. It's kind of something that unites the often polarized sides, you know, like the Big Lonely Doug and the Maywell Wickham tree. These are all trees that were discovered by loggers who loved big trees, right? So it's not just like a hippie environmentalist thing.
Ira mentions Lonely Doug, one of the icons of Canadian big trees. And there's an example here of just what he's talking about, how unifying and powerful a tree can be. Likely the most famous tree in Canadian history is not Lonely Doug, it's the Carmanah Giant. This tree would draw international attention to Canada's giant forests, where it stands amongst its kin to this day. Canada has a new iconic tree though, but this one stands alone. Lonely Doug sits in a cut block close to Port Renfrew. Lonely Doug is less a symbol of the allure of our giant forests as it is of their lost splendor. With this new tree comes the next big tree hunting superstar, TJ Watt. He'll band together with a former co-worker of Randy Stolman to break away from the Wilderness Committee and form the Ancient Forest Alliance. They would find and promote a small stand of gnarly cedar trees close to Port Renfrew as Avatar Grove. The success of their promotion would make this a tourist destination for people around the world, changing the economy of the small town of Port Renfrew, would rebrand itself from a logging town to the big tree capital of Canada.
Once you get comfortable in this environment and you look around, it's like, why wouldn't you be spending all of your time out here? We're so lucky to have some of the last temperate rainforests on planet Earth. You know, Randy Stolman was one of the first people really putting a lot of effort into that and cataloging trees and exploring valleys and whatnot. And then there was a big gap. Now that there's even just half a dozen of us, kind of maybe a few more doing this, yeah, it lights a bit of a fire under your to get going and get out there before somebody else does. And you'd think that, again, because of how dense and vast these areas are, you wouldn't really bump into anyone. But just yesterday we ran into each other at the same tree.
I feel like I'm not alone finally.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God.
There's more of us, not a lot.
Out in some of the remotest forests in the province, Eric and I were bushwhacking when we bumped into these guys. We'd all converge on one giant spruce tree that we'd realize is one of Andy's 5 photos from Maywell. This is the Coolman spruce, potentially the biggest spruce in Canada. Again, we find ourselves tracing Maywell's footsteps, and it's a fun place to be.
So solid though. I'm not sure I've ever seen a spruce that's that thick that high. Like, this thing is wow. The twist of it is so incredible.
TJ has been going out and measuring trees by himself for years, but these days, he's formed a duo with Ian, who really ups the ante. Ian's expert knowledge of where to find trees is pretty hard to match.
If I'm trying to think about what influences tree size, I'm also thinking about what influences tree growth and tree age. And so it gets me looking at succession. It gets me looking at the way in which water is moving and where it might be laying alluvium. It gets me thinking about bedrocks, such as karst, that may produce giant trees. And that fuels a much larger ecological literacy that perhaps is a much more valuable legacy than, like, you know, wrapping a tape around a big tree.
The Big Tree Registry is not only a scientific institution, it's also a scoreboard. These are our rivals, and they're a pretty good duo. The combination of TJ's familiarity with the area and Ian's knowledge and enthusiasm seems like it would be hard to beat. If anyone's up for the task, it's Eric. Even in the big tree hunting community, he's not a big name, but in recent years, Eric has measured entire valleys and forests of trees.
Biggest tree we found yet. Yeah. I'm pretty stunned, actually.
Yes.
What?
You're out of tape.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
You're right.
Got it up. Jesus.
Do a 10 point.
It's manufacture a 10. It's only 12 and a half. About 6. One of the biggest trees we've found so far.
So document the next one.
While we're out in the woods with Ian and TJ, they'll tell me something that makes my heart stop. Another big tree hunting duo, Colin and Sean, have got in touch with Maywell's grandson. What's jolting about it is that Maywell left coordinates for his family. At one point, they were going to give them to me, but then kept them for themselves and stopped returning my emails.
Yeah, Colin's been collaborating with his son.
With his grandson.
Oh, grandson, I guess. Yeah.
Or with his son as well?
One of them.
He emailed me a while back.
Al Wickham emailed you.
Yeah.
I've emailed Al Wickham like 100 times and he doesn't reply to me. Oh. He loves you.
I'll go talk to Colin to see how he got wrapped up in this whole thing, and to talk about a discovery that was made, which is more exciting than coordinates.
It is my favorite tree, ever, yeah. Because this is sort of the start of, I think, a new life that I've begun. This is when I realized, like, I don't think anyone knows about this that likes big trees. I love the crown. The shape of it is to die for. And it's just true. It has, like, the beautiful flute, the exact flute that I would want. We went to the Sylvia Hotel. It was organized by Sean, and Sean was working on the scum, the cottonwood forest. So Ralph, you know, cottonwood expert.
I named myself the king of cottonwoods. The 10 largest cottonwoods in North America. I had all 10. Oregon, Washington, forget it. I beat all of them.
So they're just going off about cottonwoods, and the drinks are pouring.
I, 1 second or 2 seconds before Sean, spotted this tree, and he says he saw it 3 seconds before I saw it, so screw.
And Ralphie always says he saw it first. I give it to him, but we know I saw it first.
You know, we're just talking about cottonwoods generally, but I'm like every now and again trying to talk about cedars and such, and I just asked him, why has no one been to the other side of Cheewhat Lake? And Ralph just sort of looks at me and goes, there's a 25-foot wide cedar of average height and no one's looking for it. And that was the moment. And there's a photo of it on his wall in his office. And I was like, can we like switch the conversation away from cottonwoods for like this moment here?
The biggest black cottonwood, not only the biggest cottonwood in North America, but it's actually the biggest poplar in the world, including the huge poplars in Tibet.
But I reached out to Maywell's grandson. There's a photo though, man. Like, that's sort of what I was saying. There's a photo. There's a photo? Well, if there is a photo, it'd be in the Cirque archive. Clue. I was looking at crazy photos, like, wow, these are incredible. These are all at Cheewhat. I don't know if these are on the registry, but they're all 16. They're not this mythical 8 meter, 26 feet figure. So I miss it. I will live with that forever. But thank God a little angel appeared. And the next week, not a word of a lie, I get an email going, I think this is like that tree that you're obsessing about.
And I'd heard Andy's story that as Maywell was dying, he'd rushed to shake the secret out of him. But for whatever reason, I don't know, they wouldn't let him in the door. Kind of thought about it. I just sort of tried to look up Maywell. And there was some information about him online, but I found that he'd donated a bunch of images to the Sooke Archives. So I just went through his whole archive that he donated, and I looked at this picture of a tree, and it said mystery tree 26 feet across. I'm like, oh, that's the f***ing tree.
If we list the largest trees in the world by species, it's giant sequoia, coastal redwood, western red cedar. If Maywell's tree does exist, it will be internationally significant as it dwarfs the cheewhat giant, closing the gap on the redwoods of California.
I'd love to see that tree like that. That's redwood, that's sequoia sized. Like, and that's record redwood and sequoia size. So if we have something like that here, it almost kind of takes the possibilities of what else is out there.
We were as excited as Sean, so we drove to the Sooke Museum to get a hard copy from their archives. The stage is set, 3 teams, and 1 record-sized tree that might actually exist.
Wow. Holy.
But look at the side, it doesn't even fit into the whole photo.
And we're just like looking at the white caps and it's like crazy water. But we're blind with like ambition.
They're like, it was like white caps, and then it like went, and then they went out.
And I see the trees at the southern end of the lake go sideways. And like watching like a nuclear blast, like the white line of the nuclear blast, the water was white like that.
And then they just got like smashed. Like he never was out of his life. Just this like storm cell. Just like, and they were like even trying to like get out in like the middle of the lake, like cut out time. Not something totally idiotic. Trees like cracking around and like breaking.
Yeah, total shot.